The emergency lights cast everything in shades of amber and red, as Dr. Marcus Chen gripped the flight console of the damaged research vessel. Outside the reinforced windows, Earth's atmosphere burned against the hull like molten fury. He'd been alone for 3 months, studying deep space anomalies, when the navigation system failed, sending him spinning back toward home in an uncontrolled descent. Now, as the ship groaned and twisted through layers of clouds, Marcus realized he wasn't going to make it to the landing pad. The ship crashed into a dense forest 50 kilometers north of the research facility, plowing through ancient trees before coming to rest against a rocky outcrop. Marcus hung suspended in his safety harness, dazed but alive. After several minutes of checking himself for injuries and confirming the ship's structural integrity, he managed to unlock the cockpit hatch and stumble outside into the cool evening air. That's when he heard it. A low, threatening hiss that made every hair on his body stand on end. Perched on a nearby boulder was a creature unlike anything in Earth's catalogs. Iridescent scales covered her lean frame, shifting between deep purple and silver depending on how the fading sunlight caught them. Her eyes were enormous, multifaceted like a dragonfly's, and they tracked his every movement with intelligent precision. Sharp teeth lined her mouth, and she was definitely preparing to attack. "Easy," Marcus whispered, raising his hand slowly. "I'm not going to hurt you." The creature hissed again, a sound like steam escaping from a pressure valve. She lowered herself into a hunting crouch, muscles coiling beneath her scaled skin. But something in her posture changed when Marcus didn't reach for any weapons. She cocked her head, studying him with what might have been curiosity. "I crashed," Marcus continued, speaking in the calm, measured tone he used when approaching injured animals during his field research days. "My ship came down. I'm trying to figure out if it's salvageable." He kept his hands visible, non-threatening. "What are you?" The creature made a chirping sound, then a longer, more complex series of clicks and whistles. Her scales flickered through rapid color changes, perhaps some form of communication. She was intelligent, definitely intelligent. "I wish I understood you," Marcus said, taking a careful step toward the ship. "I'm going back inside to assess the damage. You're welcome to observe if you want, but I really need to see if my communication systems are still functioning." He expected the creature to flee or attack. Instead, she began following him at a cautious distance, her head tilting to study him from different angles. By the time Marcus reached the ship's entrance, she was close enough that he could hear her breathing, a steady, rhythmic sound that somehow seemed curious rather than hostile. As Marcus descended into the ship's darkened interior, he heard the unmistakable sound of claws on metal behind him. The creature was following him inside. Whatever this being was. She decided to investigate the strange human and his broken machine. Marcus had no idea this decision would change everything he thought he knew about communication, trust, and what it truly meant to connect with something completely alien. The ship's interior emergency lighting flickered to life as Marcus made his way through the corridors, checking for catastrophic damage. Behind him, the scaled creature moved with surprising grace, her claws clicking softly against the metal floor. She seemed less interested in attacking and more interested in examining everything, the walls, the windows, the various equipment he'd left scattered from his research. Marcus entered the main laboratory, where his data analysis systems still hummed with residual power. The creature followed, immediately becoming fascinated by the glowing screens displaying star charts and atmospheric readings. She approached the nearest monitor, her enormous eyes reflecting the blue light, and made a series of interested chirping sounds. "You understand what these are," Marcus realized aloud. "You recognize the astronomical data." The creature turned her head toward him, and for a moment, he could have sworn he saw recognition, perhaps even acknowledgement, in those multifaceted eyes. She gestured with one clawed hand toward the screens, then back to a window that showed the star-filled sky above the forest. "You study the stars too," Marcus said, "the pieces coming together. This isn't a random creature. You're intelligent. You have technology. You're probably as far from Earth as I am, or maybe further." The being moved closer to Marcus, her head reaching approximately to his chest height. She made a low, almost contemplative sound, and her scales shifted to softer, warmer tones. Blues and greens, instead of the aggressive purples and silvers from before. If Marcus had to interpret her body language, he would have said she was no longer afraid or hostile. She was curious. She was studying him the way he was studying her. "Let me try something," Marcus said, extending his hand slowly, palm upward and open. "This is a universal gesture of peace where I come from." The creature stared at his hand for a long moment. Then, carefully, deliberately, she placed one of her scaled claws into his palm. Her skin was warm, surprisingly smooth beneath the iridescent scales, and there was something remarkably gentle about the gesture, despite her obvious physical power. They stood like that for several minutes, neither moving, both seemingly understanding that they'd crossed an invisible threshold from potential enemies to something else entirely. Communication didn't require words. Marcus was beginning to understand. Sometimes it required only the willingness to extend trust first. Over the next several hours, they began establishing a basic system of understanding. Marcus would point to objects and speak their names. The creature would chirp or whistle responses. He showed her his water supplies, his food rations, his navigation equipment. She seemed particularly fascinated by the communication array, making excited clicking sounds and gesturing toward the night sky, as if indicating she wanted to contact someone or something beyond Earth. By the time exhaustion began to pull at Marcus's consciousness, the creature had begun to relax completely in his presence. She followed him to the crew quarters, watched him retrieve a blanket and prepare a makeshift bed on one of the storage benches, and then did something that surprised him entirely. She curled up on the floor beside his makeshift bed, coiling her long tail around herself in a protective spiral, and closed her eyes. Her scales had settled into a soft, gentle glow, almost like bioluminescence, casting everything in an ethereal light. It was, Marcus realized, perhaps the most profound moment of his entire career as a scientist. Not because of what he was observing, but because of what it meant. Trust could exist between strangers, even between alien species, if someone was brave enough to offer it first. The creature had accepted his extended hand. Now she was showing him she was willing to stay, to rest in his presence without fear. In return, Marcus kept his breathing slow and steady, his movements gentle, understanding that she was teaching him something crucial about connection, acceptance, and the universal language of vulnerability. By the third day after the crash landing, something remarkable had developed between Marcus and the creature. He'd begun calling her Vera in his private logs, short for vertebrate, extraterrestrial, remarkable ally. She seemed to respond to the sound, or at least she no longer hissed when he used it. They'd established a rhythm. Marcus worked on repairs to the communication array, while Vera observed, occasionally making suggestions through complex sequences of clicks and whistles that he was beginning to recognize as a form of language. The ship's communication system crackled to life late in the afternoon. The research facility had finally detected his distress beacon. "Dr. Chen, this is Command," a static-filled voice came through. "We've located your signal. We're sending an extraction team. Remain in your ship and prepare for immediate evacuation. We're 3 hours away." Marcus should have felt relief. Instead, he felt his stomach drop. He looked over at Vera, who was perched on the observation chair, her scales shifting between curious blues and concerned purples. "Did you understand that?" he asked her. Vera made a complex series of sounds, longer and more urgent than her usual vocalizations. She suddenly stood, her entire body tense, and her scales flushed a deep, warning crimson. She approached Marcus and did something she hadn't done since that first day. She hissed. "I know," Marcus said quietly. "They're coming to take me away from you." The hiss intensified. Vera paced the laboratory in sharp, agitated movements, her tail lashing against the walls. She approached the communication panel and deliberately tapped it with her claw, creating a loud, angry screech of static. "Easy," Marcus urged, trying to calm her. "I have to go back. They need to debrief me. I have to tell them about you, about—" Vera suddenly moved toward him with surprising speed, and for one heart-stopping moment, Marcus thought she might attack. Instead, she grabbed his hand with surprising gentleness and yanked him toward the crew quarters. She literally pulled him into the small room, pushed him down onto the storage bench where he'd been sleeping, and then climbed into his lap. All 400 pounds of scaled alien muscle arranged itself across his legs and torso, her head resting against his chest. "Vera, what are you doing?" Marcus asked, though he was beginning to understand. She made a sound he'd never heard before, a long, low rumble that seemed to vibrate through her entire body and into his. Her scales glowed a soft, luminescent amber. She gripped his shoulders with her claws, not painfully, but with unmistakable firmness. "You refuse to leave," Marcus said, comprehension dawning. "You're saying you won't let them take me away." Vera lifted her head just enough to look directly into his eyes. The multifaceted gaze was fierce, protective, and absolutely resolute. She hissed again, not threatening toward him, but a declaration, a statement of intent. She was claiming him, protecting him, refusing to accept that their connection should be separated. "I'm not your pet," Marcus said softly, understanding what might be implied by her actions. Vera made a sharp clicking sound that might have been disagreement. Her scales pulsed with that protective amber glow. She pulled him closer, her tail wrapping protectively around his waist, and she held firm. The message was clear. She was not refusing because he was her possession. She was refusing because connection mattered, because trust mattered, because what they had built in 3 days in this crashed ship was more real, more valuable, more true than any protocol or extraction procedure. Marcus made a decision that would change the trajectory of his entire life. He reached up and turned off the communication array. The research facility's extraction team arrived exactly on schedule. They swept through the surrounding forest in full hazard suits, weapons charged, completely prepared for a hostile encounter with an unidentified life form. Instead, they found something entirely unexpected. The crashed ship's hatch sealed from the inside, and absolutely no response to their hails. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, the facility's director, stood outside the sealed vessel with her arms crossed, her hazmat suit glowing in the afternoon sun. "Open this hatch, Dr. Chen," she commanded through the external speakers. "We have protocol to follow. Immediately open this hatch and prepare the unknown entity for quarantine and study." Inside the ship, Marcus held Vera closer as she trembled with tension. Her scales flickered between deep purples and angry reds. "They don't understand," Marcus whispered to her. "They think you're a threat to be contained. They think I'm compromised." Vera made a low, dangerous sound, a warning rumble that vibrated through his entire body. She moved toward the communication panel, raised her claw, and deliberately smashed it. Sparks flew from the damaged equipment, and the external speakers went dead. "That's going to get me court-martialed," Marcus said, but there was something like a laugh in his voice. "You just destroyed government property." Over the next 6 hours, Marcus used every ounce of his scientific knowledge and diplomatic training to explain the situation to the extraction team through written messages slid under the sealed hatch. He detailed everything: Vera's obvious intelligence, her capacity for communication, her demonstrated ability to establish trust and mutual respect. He explained that she wasn't a specimen to be studied or contained, but an individual with rights and consciousness that deserved recognition. Dr. Okonkwo was skeptical. The military personnel were outright hostile. But Marcus had one crucial advantage. He was the only qualified expert on the scene who could actually communicate with Vera, and he absolutely refused to cooperate unless they agreed to his terms. "I will not betray her trust," Marcus wrote on the 4th message. "You want data? I will provide it. You want cooperation? You will get it. But only if you agree to treat her as an individual and a potential ally, not as a specimen. She came to Earth as a refugee. She could just as easily leave." That last statement was pure bluff. Marcus had no idea if Vera could actually leave or where she came from. But it worked. Faced with the possibility of losing the entire interaction and any valuable information, the extraction team agreed to establish a temporary research station outside the ship where Marcus and Vera could be observed and studied, but with their autonomy preserved. The process of introducing Vera to the larger scientific community was delicate and complex. Vera was obviously intelligent, obviously wary of authority, and obviously determined to remain close to Marcus. Whenever researchers tried to separate them for individual analysis, she would hiss and refuse to cooperate, sometimes positioning her body between Marcus and the researchers in an unmistakably protective stance. "She's not trained," one researcher observed. "She shouldn't have developed these specific attachment behaviors to a single human so rapidly." But Marcus understood what was actually happening. Vera wasn't exhibiting aberrant behavior. She was demonstrating something profound about the nature of loyalty and connection. She'd chosen to trust him first, to extend vulnerability first, and now she was staying faithful to that choice. It was entirely her own decision, made with full awareness and intelligence. 3 weeks into the observation period, something remarkable happened. Vera suddenly made a series of complex vocalizations directed at the research team, particularly toward one of the linguists, Dr. James Whitmore. Her scales shifted through a pattern of colors that seemed almost deliberate, almost like she was trying to communicate something specific. Dr. Whitmore's eyes widened. "I think," he said slowly, "she's trying to tell us where she's from. I think she's giving us coordinates." Marcus felt Vera relax slightly beside him. She was no longer just defending her bond with him. She was beginning to trust the larger group. She was starting to believe that her choice to stay, to connect, to be vulnerable with these strange humans might lead to something better than isolation or confinement. 6 months after the crash landing, the entire dynamic had transformed. Vera had become the central figure in a revolutionary new understanding of interspecies communication. Her willingness to teach humans her language, combined with Marcus's intuitive understanding of her needs and values, created a breakthrough in xenolinguistics that would reshape humanity's approach to potential extraterrestrial contact forever. The coordinates Vera had provided led to the discovery of her homeworld, a thriving civilization of her species, living on a moon orbiting a gas giant at the edge of a nearby star system. Through careful communication, the research community learned that Vera had been an explorer and scientist herself, mapping uncharted space when her vessel suffered a catastrophic systems failure. She'd survived in stasis pods for nearly 500 years, drifting through space until she crashed on Earth by pure chance. But perhaps the most important discovery wasn't about Vera's origins or her advanced technology. It was about what Marcus and Vera's relationship revealed about the nature of connection across any boundary. She could have manipulated you, Dr. Okonkwo told Marcus during one of their weekly briefings. She's clearly intelligent enough to fake trust, to simulate emotional connection in order to ensure her own survival. Why didn't she? Marcus didn't hesitate, because trust isn't a tool, it's a choice. Vera chose to trust me first, and once she made that choice, she stayed faithful to it. That's real. That's not manipulation. That's integrity. Vera was in the observation room when he said this, and Marcus saw her scales shimmer to that soft, protective amber they always turned when she was expressing contentment. She moved to the window and placed her clawed hand against the glass, a gesture that had become their private symbol of connection. Over the following months, plans developed for a collaborative research facility that would serve as a bridge between human and Vera's civilization. Vera became an ambassador, not through any formal appointment, but simply because she was willing to stand between two species and translate not just language, but values, understanding, and the capacity to see past differences. But perhaps her most important contribution was personal. By refusing to leave Marcus's side, by climbing into his lap and refusing to be separated, by defending their connection even when it defied every protocol and expectation. Vera taught everyone who witnessed their relationship a fundamental truth about what it meant to be alive and conscious. Connection wasn't weakness. Vulnerability wasn't defeat. Trust, freely given and faithfully maintained, was the most powerful force in any universe. In choosing to see Marcus not as a potential captor or threat, but as someone worthy of faith and loyalty, Vera had shown that genuine connection could bridge any gap between any two conscious beings willing to take the risk. On Marcus's last day at the research facility before transferring to the new collaborative station, Vera climbed into his lap one final time. He wasn't sure if she understood that nothing was really changing. They would be together at the new facility, continuing their work and their relationship. But she seemed to want to reassure him anyway, to confirm that whatever came next, their bond remained unchanged. "Thank you," Marcus whispered into her luminescent scales. for refusing to be my pet, for refusing to let me treat you as less than you are, for showing me that real connection comes from mutual choice and respect. Vera made that low content rumble, and in the language they'd created together, a hybrid of human speech and her complex vocalizations, she offered her response. Thank you for seeing me first, for offering trust before demanding obedience, for building something new with me instead of trying to control what I am. As they looked toward the future together, toward the new collaborative facility and all the possibilities it held, Marcus understood that the greatest discovery of his career wasn't about alien technology or distant worlds. It was about the power of one simple choice, to see another being, truly see them, and to value that connection more than any protocol, expectation, or boundary that said they shouldn't connect at all. Sometimes revolution starts small. Sometimes it starts with one creature refusing to be separated from another, insisting that their bond matters more than convenient explanations. Sometimes it starts with two beings, human and alien, choosing each other again and again, even when the entire universe seems designed to keep them apart. That choice, renewed each day, changed everything. Connection is a choice we make repeatedly, and that choice matters more than any boundary society creates. Strong. End P. All line. Of all.